Hello. Ever wondered what is the healthiest cooking method you could use in order to boost your health and maybe avoid problems that have to do with cooking methods? In this video, I'm going to rank different kinds of cooking methods according to their health value. Stick with me to the end, and in there we'll find out the best, the healthiest cooking methods that you could use. I'm Nira, I'm a registered dietitian. When I come to rank cooking methods, I think most people usually choose the cooking method according to what tastes better, and that is the main criteria for them. That is, of course, a good and valid criterion. First cooking method I chose is by fire. And when we cook by fire, that means a grill or barbecue, a way the food is in touch with either open fire or coal or some heat source directly very near the food itself. So in this category, we have first the charcoal grill. It is social and we're used to doing that. It has a lot of problems. Yes, it is very tasty and everyone loves it. But there are two problems here. We usually do that with meat, and the meat has fat in it, saturated fat, the lard. This fat dissolves because of the heat down into the charcoal. The smoke from the charcoal by itself has some components that are carcinogenic. And when the lard touches the charcoal, other and no less potent carcinogenic appear. And all that goes back up into the meat by the smoke. We get a very tasty piece of meat with a lot of carcinogenic components attached to it. We could avoid some of them by maybe putting the piece of meat on aluminum foil or something that separates so that the smoke doesn't come up and go back to the meat. But that is probably the point of charcoal grill, to have the smoke go back into the meat. So very bad ranking for barbecue on charcoal. And there are other kinds of grills which are like electric grill, and then there is gas grill, and those both are better than charcoal grill. Still, we have the problem of the fat that dissolves, and when it touches the heat source, it creates carcinogenic materials. And we do have the smoke that brings some of them back to the meat, but at least we don't have that charcoal smoke together that creates other carcinogenic materials. Barbecuing or grilling on electric grill or gas grill is somewhat better than the charcoal grill. Second category of cooking is cooking by oil. And here we have 4 candidates for our ranking. Ranking number 4 for oil cooking, worst kind of cooking by oil, which may surprise some of you, is pan frying. Pan frying means I take a pan, I pour a good amount of oil into it. I actually aim to have like this much oil in the pan. I put my dish, whatever I cook, in the hot oil. It takes a few minutes for one side to be cooked and browned, and then I flip it over and do the other side. It takes longer to fry something in that method than it is to deep fry it. It absorbs a lot of oil, so this is our worst option when we're talking about oil. Third place in oil cooking is deep frying. Now, deep frying is taking a whole pot of oil, heating it up, usually using a thermometer to get to the right heat. We put the food that we fry into the oil. It is drowned in oil and it cooks relatively fast. That is the one advantage of the deep frying over pan frying. The duration of the food inside the oil is shorter, so it absorbs a little less oil. In both those methods, you need to put the food on some paper towels to absorb some of the oil. But still, on both these methods, we get a ton of calories from the oil. Any dish that was prepared on either pan frying or deep frying has a lot more calories in it than if we used other methods. Something else that is to consider is when we heat oil, it could get oxygenated, it could turn into trans fat. So we'd rather use those methods as little as possible. Second place in cooking by oil is searing the food. And here we're talking about a griddle or a plancha, and in it we put the food either with no oil at all or with a little bit of oil. Here you can see when you put vegetables on the griddle and vegetables are very low fat, then you should add a little vegetable oil, either olive oil or canola oil. But if you put a piece of meat on the griddle, you don't need to put any excess fat in it because the fat from the meat will dissolve and create a thin layer of fat that will help the food not stick to the griddle. That method is much preferable, in my opinion, because you have very little excess oil. If you use a plancha or a griddle, it's suitable for thin pieces of meat because then they cook faster on both sides. And if you take a thicker slice of meat, like a thick steak, then you could sear it on both sides and then continue the cooking by baking. First place in cooking by oil, and that is half oil, half water, is stir fry. When we stir fry, we start by a small amount of oil. And here I have to say that really depends on how you make it, because I've seen some stir fries in restaurants that start with a huge amount of oil. But if you do it at home, or if you ask maybe at the restaurant to use less oil, then you could start with like a tablespoon or two of oil, and then it goes on to other ingredients. So it does have the starter of the oil in it. You add sauces, you add vegetables, you add all kinds of ingredients that stop the oil cooking, and also it makes the oil a small amount of the dish and not something very, very central to it. So our first place in cooking by oil is stir fry, and second place is searing. So if you need something that looks like it is cooked by oil, always prefer the smallest amount of oil you could use, and searing is always preferable. Next section of cooking is cooking by air. It may sound weird, but actually baking is cooking by air. We put the food in hot air and then it gets cooked by it. When we bake, we put our food in hot air, and what we want to achieve is for our dish to be prepared, but also we like the golden brown color of our dish, and that is usually why we choose baking over other methods. This browning is actually not very good for us. It is called the Maillard reaction, and it creates components that are hazardous and they age us. That is why they're called the ages. That is a joke. These are acrylamide molecules that damage our cells. Air frying is very new to our kitchens. You put in a very small amount of oil, which is good. It takes less time. It happens faster. We lose less vitamins. It could create an effect similar to frying. The name is a little misleading because it does not fry, okay? It bakes. It's like a turbo baking. So it happens faster and it happens stronger, and we see this Maillard effect a lot stronger. So I think both of them, baking and air frying, they have pretty much the same benefits, just maybe air fryer is a little better because the food spends shorter time in the heat. Our last category of cooking has a lot of options in it, and it is almost as ancient as cooking by fire, and that is cooking by water. Water boil on 100 degrees Celsius, and that's it. They could get a little higher by some ingredients, but in general, the heat is far lower than it is when we fry food, and also it's lower than when we bake. So this is an advantage of cooking by water. The heat is not as hot. We lose less vitamins. I have 6 or 7 competitors to this category. We will start with the last place, which is boiling. When we boil food, we actually lose a lot of ingredients into the water. I put the food in boiling water, let it cook in there, and then I take it out and discard the water. But many ingredients are left in the water. Most vitamins, minerals, some better ingredients get lost with the water, and that's a shame. Then we have blanching. I think usually a French cuisine technique that is meant to achieve vegetables that are very bright in color and a little cooked, but mostly still crunchy. And to do that, we need a lot of dishes. I always make sure I use the smallest amount of dishes possible for cooking. But this, you need to boil a lot of water and then put the vegetables in the boiling water. And then after a minute or 2 or 3, you take them out of the water and put them in a bowl of ice so that the cooking stops. And what you get are those crunchy, bright vegetables, which is lovely, but we have other ways to achieve that these days. Blanching is number 6. I do not recommend it, and I don't see any reason to use it. 5th place in cooking by water is steaming. The cooking is made by the steam of the water and not the water itself. So you take a pot, you put a small amount of water in it, and then you use this strainer, specialized strainer, or any strainer you have at home to put above the water. When the water don't reach the food in the strainer, put a good lid on it, and when the water boils, steam is made, and the steam is what cooks the food. The advantage here is that the food is not submerged in the water, so it doesn't lose any components to the water. This method of cooking also usually achieves pretty bright and crunchy vegetables. It depends on the amount of time. After like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just check it by a fork or a knife and see how tender it is. Usually it does keep a very bright color, and after you take it off the steamer, you can add any spices or condiments that you like to make it to your taste. So steaming is number 5, and I think it is a pretty healthy way of making your food. Number 4 of our list is a pressure cooker. A pressure cooker is a specialized pot that can make a lot of pressure inside by creating a lot of steam on high heat and then not letting that steam go out, so the pressure inside the pot goes up. Pressure cooker is very useful for dishes that need a long time, and it really shortens the time needed for the food to be prepared. So it's very logical to use a pressure cooker to tenderize tough pieces of meat or to cook beans. And then when you cook beans on a pressure cooker, you don't even need to soak them first because it really shortens the time of their cooking. If you like pressure cookers, you're welcome to use it. The pressure does hurt more vitamins. On the other hand, the duration of the cooking is much shorter than it would be if I wasn't using the pressure cookers. If you cook regular food in it, it will be grossly overcooked very soon. So this really is good just for food that needs a lot of cooking time. Number 3 is the slow cooker or the crock pot. This is an electric pot, usually made of clay. You put it on and you put in all your ingredients, and it could work for like 4 hours, 8 hours, overnight, whatever you need. It is very convenient to make a stew. You just put all the ingredients in, you put the lid on, and you just forget about it until tomorrow or until the evening. You could do it in the morning, and when you come in the evening, your meal is cooked. It doesn't have any advantages health-wise. It does help us conveniently make hearty family dishes, and we don't have to stay in the kitchen and spend the entire day over it. So it is very convenient, and that is why it ranks 3 in our list of cooking by water. Number 2 is the soup or stew, that are all kinds of dishes that are made in a pot and include also the cooking water with the dish itself. And I talked about it before, I think. And drums, please. Number 1 in cooking by water, and we've already talked about it, is stir fry. Now, stir fry is partly oil, and we talked about it in oil, but also when we talk about water, because stir fry is kind of a mix. You do use a little bit of oil in the beginning, but most of it is moving the food and using all kinds of gravies, soy sauce, oyster sauce, sometimes tomato sauce or broth. So you do use liquid in it. It is not exactly cooking by water, but it does give us the advantage of very fast cooking with liquids. Maybe we could say that number one is soup or stew, and an extra credit goes to stir fry as well. So this was about water. Now, a bonus way of cooking, which was not known until like maybe 20, 30 years ago, is microwaving, a cooking method that is very popular in our kitchens. And microwaving is important because, first, a lot of people are scared of it. They hear like electromagnetic waves and it's like they think it is very dangerous. Well, it is not. You should not stand exactly with your face in the microwave when it works, but as long as there are no leaks, there is absolutely no danger in it. And what microwave does, those electromagnetic waves, they move the water molecules one against the other, and that makes them heat up. Nothing is changed on the molecular level of the food. And because microwave is usually very, very quick, usually the loss of vitamins is minimal. If you remember, we talked about blanching. Actually, microwave achieves that very, very easily. When you put vegetables in the microwave, and no water is needed, especially if they're frozen. If you take frozen vegetables and put them in the microwave, they already have a thin layer of ice around them. And this ice is more than enough water, and you really don't need to add any more water to the vegetable. I put them in the microwave. I don't even bother to cover them up. And if I do need to cover them up, I use another plate. I never use any plastic wraps for it. Never. 2, 3, 4 minutes, it depends on your appliance. And it is ready, it is vibrant in color, it is not overcooked, it still has a crunch, and it is wonderful and ready to eat. And once you take it out, then you can add in a spoonful of olive oil and garlic and tomato paste and whatever you need to make it to your taste. As a cooking method, I think microwave has a very honorable place in our kitchen as a quick and easy cooking method. I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I would love to get your comments on what you liked and what you didn't like. And I would very much love to hear your ideas for my next videos. See you then.